But the truth of the matter is, when you're a learner, you need some help and some guidance to know how to keep improving on that learning journey. And so you can find that help and guidance from these different spaces. I know a lot of people use YouTube, guidance books, online memberships, online classes and courses. There's lots out there. Now, what I would say is when you're accessing any of these materials is do make sure that the person who's creating these materials has got experience and they're qualified. They're qualified in Harp and they're qualified in teaching. This is what we always recommend. Learning is not one-dimensional. When we're learning something, our learning graph doesn't go like this. Learning, the same rate all the time, always learning. Learning goes like this. I learn quite a lot. Oh, and then I plateau a little bit. Kind of don't learn a bit. Oh, and then I learned a lot. And then, oh gosh, I went backwards a little bit. And then I kept up with it. Okay. The learning journey has peaks and troughs and plateaus and all sorts of things going on. Welcome to the How to Harp podcast, where your harp, your journey are always front and centre. I'm Heather Downie, Harpist and founder of How to Harp, your online space for expert guidance and endless inspiration. Each week, we are here to empower, inspire and encourage you, whether you're just beginning or many years into your harp adventure. From chats with world-class professionals to real stories from everyday harpists, to practical tips you can use right away. This podcast is all about helping you feel happy, confident, and fulfilled with your harp. Hello everyone and welcome to the 13th episode, unlucky for some, but not for us, I am certain, of the How to Harp podcast. And it's not unlucky, it's definitely lucky because it is our bonus week this week. There are 5 weeks in October. And so we are going to be giving you the answers to some of your questions. So you guys have sent in some questions for me to get stuck into and answering. And I'm really excited. I've got them all down here in front of me and I'm hoping that I will get through them all. Now, before I delve into the questions that you guys have sent in, although some of you did ask these questions, unsurprisingly, I'm going to start the episode with the 3 most common questions I get asked when I do Q&As or when I do power hours. So these questions seem to come up all the time and I'm going to start with those. And then I'm going to get stuck right into the ones that you guys have sent in. So the first one, and I think this is the most commonly asked question, and I think this especially is true because most of the people who are listening and most of the people who contact me online are adult learners and they are often learning by themselves. So they maybe don't have a tutor and they're looking at online resources and learning in different ways and really commanding their own learning, as you might say. So the question is, how do I know what to work on to help me improve? And it's such a good question, isn't it? Because we want to be improving. We want to be making our skills better. And so how is it we know where we should focus our attention on? How is it that we know what to do to make sure that we are improving? Now, if you are working with a tutor, then that is obviously your first port of call. Definitely check in with your tutor, set goals, make sure that you guys are aligned with what you want from your learning journey and allow them to help you set out that path and set out your learning for you, or certainly guide you in what to choose next. But of course, not all of us have one-to-one tutors. And so what do we do if we don't have someone there guiding us specifically to our personal learning? Well, the bottom line of this is to find out how you can improve your playing or what to do next to help you improve your playing, you have to find some sort of guided learning or structured learning for you to follow. Now, there's lots of different options out there, and I'm sure many of you will have looked at them. There are books that you can follow through structured learning. There are a number of different online courses. Of course, we have the How to Harp membership, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a moment, about how we help people structure their learning in there. There's one-to-one lessons online. There's group lessons online. There's many different ways to get some structure in your learning. But the truth of the matter is, when you're a learner, you need some help and some guidance to know how to keep improving on that learning journey. And so you can find that help and guidance from these different spaces. I know a lot of people use YouTube, guidance books, online memberships, online classes and courses. There's lots out there. Now, what I would say is when you're accessing any of these materials is do make sure that the person who's creating these materials has got experience and they're qualified. They're qualified in Harp and they're qualified in teaching. This is what we always recommend in How to Harp. We're really big on making sure that we are providing you with the best quality that we can. And the way that we do that is we give ourselves structured learning. So we make sure that we are trained and educated in both learning and teaching the arts and also the harp. So yeah, any resources that are accessing, ask yourself, where are these resources coming from? Who's made them? And am I definitely accessing quality resources? Now, in the How to Harp membership, we have a number of different learning paths. And these learning pathways have been created specifically with the adult learner in mind, because a number of us want to learn based on our ability. In other words, a number of us that are like, I want to start at the very start, consider myself a complete beginner. I want to do a complete beginner course, make sure that I'm learning all the foundations, etc., etc. Some people join and they're like, you know, I'm kind of post-beginner level, or I'm kind of in early intermediate level, and I want to work on something that is at that level that will help me kind of level up my harping. And that's a fantastic way of learning. And you can even check in with that kind of level-based learning by doing some grade work. You don't even necessarily have to do the exam at the end of doing the grade work, but even just if you complete the work for the grade, prepare your pieces and everything else that goes along with that repertoire, it means that at the end of that process, you're able to say, yep, I know I'm about this level and I know where I'm moving to next. So we have we have level-based learning pathways in the How to Harp membership. And these are really important to us. But the other thing that we have available is we have skill-based, or I guess you could call it area of harping-based learning pathways. And that's because whilst it's really, really useful to work on improving yourself based on your level of harping, it's also a really great idea to really think about what you want from your harping and work on specific areas of the harp. And everyone tends to have more natural abilities in some areas and maybe struggle more in different areas. Everyone's a different learner, and so we tend to struggle with different things and find other things more easy. And so that's why in the How to Harp membership, the other thing that we have created is harp area-based or skill set learning pathways, such as our creativity pathway or inspiration pathway, or our theory, or any of these kind of pathways that are based on area that links to your harping. And so any level of harpist can embark on these learning pathways to improve that area of their harping and bring their harping on. And so this gives you a really great structured learning approach to work through. But, and there's a big but with this, everything that you do is obviously going to be unique to you. So if you're following a learning pathway, any learning pathway, one that you've bought a book for or one you're following in the How to Harp membership, what can be really, really useful is to try and have the opportunity to check in with a tutor, a more experienced player, with someone who can actually check in with you and say, this is all looking great, troubleshoot any specific issues that you're having in certain areas that will be unique to you, look at your unique hand, look at your unique body position, and give you specific feedback. And that's why, again, in the How to Harp membership, we've got a number of ways for you to check in, ask questions. And of course, I'm getting a phone call during this. This is what happens when William doesn't do the podcast with me. There we go, just silence that. Because William always puts my everything onto do not disturb mode. So I'll just do that now as well. Oh dear. Can't believe I'm saying that I need William in the podcast. But anyway, never mind. We won't be interrupted again. So yes, having a point that you can check in. So in the How to Harp membership, we have a monthly power hour where people can come. It doesn't matter what pathway you're working on. It doesn't matter if you're not working on a pathway. Ask your questions. You can come on screen. You can demonstrate your hand. You can get my feedback. And this makes sure that any questions that are specific and unique to you, you can get answered. We also have live check-ins for the specific learning pathways, just to make sure people are understanding what areas they should be working on, and they have that opportunity to ask questions when they know that others are working on the same material. So we've got those two options which are included in the How to Harp membership. And we also have the opportunity to book a one-to-one lesson. So if you are working on a specific pathway, or you have a specific question, or you're just even wondering, like, what should I actually do next? What pathway should I do? What level am I? Where should I point my structured learning? You can book a one-to-one lesson and get that kind of really specific one-to-one guidance. So I hope that answers that question. Next, because I got that phone call, my notes have gone. Here we go. So the next most common thing I get asked about is technique-specific questions. And what I mean by this is people coming and saying, my fingers are buzzing. Why? I'm not making the sound I want. Why? I'm getting some pain in my thumb. Why? And so questions that are really specific to them. But the reason I've put this in here to answer as a general question is because the answer is usually the same, and it comes down to the foundations of the playing. So in general, if someone is making a buzz on the harp, it will come down to their seating position, their hand position at the harp, and then their basic fundamental technique about their placing of their fingers, or their placing, plucking, bending, tucking. Okay, the fundamentals of playing the harp. And so in general, whenever someone says, why is this buzzing for me? It's because of something to do with those foundations of harping. And so if you are out there and you're thinking, oh, something's not quite right here, I'm making a buzz, or something isn't feeling quite right in my hand, or I'm not producing the exact sound that I'm really looking for, then what I'd encourage you to do is go back to the foundations of your harping. So go back and look at your body position and your hand and arm position at the harp, and then check in with your general technique: placing, plucking, bending the thumb, and tucking. And those foundations of playing the harp. Usually when we get these technical specific questions, there's some sort of tweak that needs done in those foundation areas. And the third and final question, and I'm doing really good with time, I'll definitely get on to answering some of yours, is how do I create a good practice session? And I feel like when we're saying a good practice session, that means a practice session that's going to help us progress, but also a practice session that's enjoyable. Well, the first thing is I actually have a free handout on this very subject. I have my free practice guide to help you plan your practice sessions. But just to touch in on this, in a practice session, what you want to be doing is giving yourself a well-rounded warm-up and working on some of your repertoire. And I also think it's really, really great to work on just something that you enjoy and you love. So either some sort of improvisation, a bit of noodling around, or a piece that you're not working on, that is under your fingers, that you just love playing. And so I think those are three great elements to put into a practice session to give you a really productive and happy experience in that practice session. So let's break those three sections down a little bit. So a well-rounded warm-up, and I'm going to do this fairly quickly, because I could actually do a whole podcast on a well-rounded warm-up. And I'm actually making a book right now. That's the first I've mentioned it. Very exciting. But I'm making a book right now about well-rounded warm-ups. But a well-rounded warm-up should include some work on settling your mind and your body. So maybe a little bit of dynamic stretching, a little bit of focused breathing, something to kind of bring you into the practice session, bring your body and mind into that practice session before you even touch the strings. Then you want to include what I call some close work and some stretch work. That's where your fingers are playing on adjacent strings, so they're playing close together, and where your fingers are playing stretched out, so you literally get to stretch your fingers, something like triads or arpeggios, where you've got more than one string between each of the fingers, and so you get a nice stretch. Very simple. I always link this to like if an athlete's warming up for, say, a marathon, you're going to, warm yourself, maybe do a walk and maybe a very, very gentle jog to warm those muscles up. You're going to stretch those muscles and then you're going to run your marathon, right? And it's the same with your fingers. So close work gives you that very gentle warm up, gets those muscles moving, ready to be stretched in those stretched positions. So you've got your close work and your stretch work. And then you want to also ensure that you're picking some sort of warm-up that is linked to the repertoire you're about to play, or that's linked to a skill that you're trying to achieve to play that repertoire. So for example, you're playing a piece that's got harmonics in it. Make sure that you've got an exercise in your warm-up that is linked to harmonics. You're playing a piece that's got a left-hand Alberti bass. Do some sort of Alberti bass warm-up in your warm-up session. So you're always linking your warm-ups to help you achieve the repertoire you're working towards. You're not just randomly warming up with any warm-ups. You're picking your warm-ups to help you with your repertoire goals and to help you improve your skills. Then you're moving on to your repertoire section, and you want to make sure that during your repertoire section in a good practice session, you're pulling out parts of, you're not just playing your repertoire from start to finish. I've got 3 pieces and I spent 15 minutes playing them from start to finish the whole time. No, you want to make sure that you are journaling, you're writing down what section. Bar 5 has got a tricky tuck. I need to work on that. And so you come to your practice session, you look at your notes. Oh yes, that's right. Bar 5 is something I need to work on this piece. So you just work on bar 5 for a little bit. And then you look at your notes. Oh, I can see that later on there's a tricky scale passage in bar 26. I'm going to jump to that part and work on that little section. Yeah, and then you're going to build those sections in. So you might play, if you were working on bar 5, then you might play bar 3 to 8. And then you might play bar 2 to 10. And then you might play bar 1 to 12. So you're working that section in. And then you're going to finish with the whole piece. And then you're going to finish with writing down what you might want to work on next time. Okay, and you're going to do that for all your repertoire that you're working on. And I think it's a great idea to finish a practice session just playing something you love. Yeah, just like, I really love this piece, it's under my fingers, I'm going to play it, practicing for pleasure, or having a noodle around if you enjoy that, if you enjoy improvising a bit, or whatever it is that you really enjoy. You can even play if you're really enjoying one of your pieces that you're actually learning at that point in time, you can play that and let the mistakes go if there are mistakes. Instead of kind of stopping and saying, okay, what is that? Let me work on that. Just playing it and just enjoying the experience of playing. And I think that's a really nice way of wrapping up a session, to play something you really love. So those are my 3 most commonly asked questions. Let's delve into some of the questions you guys sent in. And the first one is from Nikki. And it's related to that last question that I gave you, related to creating a good practice session. So Nikki asks, what ratio should I be practicing of exercises and pieces as a beginner, and then an intermediate, and then an advanced? So in a practice session, how much should I be practicing exercises versus how much should I be practicing repertoire? Well, the answer is not as simple as just saying it should be a 30-70 ratio. It doesn't quite work like that. It depends on how much time you've got. And it depends on what exactly you're working on with your skill set. What I would say is the most important thing is that you are doing technical exercises, that you are warming yourself up, that you are choosing a well-rounded warm-up, even if it's very short. So if you think, well, I've only got 15 minutes to practice, you can still do a nice well-rounded warm-up in 3 to 4 minutes. Okay, you don't need to be spending half an hour warming up. You can do good technical work and a good warm-up in a very short amount of time. If you've got longer, then you probably would want to spend longer on your technique and exercises section of your practice. I tend to be a little bit more exercise focused because I'm very aware that it's those technical exercises that will help me play my repertoire. And I would also say that I probably would be a little bit more technical focused as a beginner than as an advanced player. And that's mainly because when you're an advanced player and you're kind of brushing up those skills ready to play whatever repertoire you're working on, you're reminding your fingers of how to do those skills, those harp skills. So there's a tricky fast scale passage in one of your advanced pieces and you play some scales. Hopefully you're not learning the skill of tucking and learning the skill of playing a scale, but you're just reminding your fingers of those skills ready to play the repertoire. But that doesn't mean that, as a beginner, you should be 50-50, as intermediate, you should be 70-30, and as advanced, you should be 80-20. It just means that you might not need as long working on your technical exercises when you're advanced because you're not learning the technical skill, you're just brushing it up. That being said, the more advanced you get, the more technically demanding the pieces are, and the more your technique has to be really, really on point. So I've not answered your question yet, Nikki. The most important thing is that you are including exercises. If you enjoy exercises, there's nothing wrong with doing more exercises than someone who maybe does a little bit more repertoire. But the most important thing is to include a well-rounded warm-up within your practice session and then move on to your repertoire. I know that there have been times when I've maybe had a dip in my practicing or my learning where maybe playing a piece has seemed a little bit daunting. So practicing my repertoire has seemed daunting and I've maybe only practiced scales and exercises, and that's totally fine. Okay, because you're still going to be moving your skill set forward by practicing those scales and exercises, and sometimes they're less emotive for us than the repertoire. So the best thing you can do is sit down and practice something, and if that's you're just sitting down and doing your warm-up, then that's great. You're still going to move your playing forward. Whereas if you sit down and you only ever play repertoire, you're going to find it very difficult to progress. But a balance is nice. For me, if I'm doing an hour's practice, and this is just for me, just to give you a rough idea, I'm generally going to warm up for 15 to 20 minutes, maybe half an hour, depending on the pieces I'm about to play. So hopefully that helps. I know I didn't quite answer the question, but... Okay, Kristen's asking, it's the week of Halloween. It's Halloween today, in fact. How can we make songs we already play and know sound creepy in an easy way? This is a great question. So how can we adapt the tunes we already know so we can play them at Halloween and they can sound a little bit creepy? Well, if your tune is in a major key, then move it to the minor. So for example, if you're playing something in C major, then just put yourself into C minor. You need A flat, E flat and B flat. I said that in a little bit strange order there, but anyway, B, E, A flats. And you can then pluck exactly the same strings and you'll be playing the piece in a minor key and it will sound more spooky. If you have a piece that's already in a minor key and you want it to sound more spooky, you could try playing it in the harmonic minor. And that means you need to sharpen the seventh. So for example, if you're playing a piece in A minor, you want to put on a G sharp, and then you'll be playing an A harmonic minor and it will sound a little bit more creepy. That way, it's nice and easy because you're just adjusting your levers or your pedals and you're plucking the same strings. I think that's the easiest way. Okay, Betsy is asking, are there specific exercises that can help me increase my speed? Yes, there absolutely are. in the How to Harp membership, we've got dexterity drills, which will really help you increase your speed. The best thing you can do to help you increase your speed is work with a metronome. A lot of us don't like the metronome, but it is ideal for helping us increase speed. We also have a metronome course in the How to Harp membership, which will help you with that too. So dexterity exercises, because they're going to make your fingers dexterous and therefore able to be nimble and fast. And then using the metronome to help you incrementally increase your speed. Karen asks, how to really dive in and make a good sound from a finger position point of view. Do's and don'ts. So this is a huge question, but I'm just going to give a few tips on it. The first thing is define what a good sound is, because a good sound, you know, in general, if we want a ringing and full sound, we want to play in the middle of the string. But if we play près de la table, right, we're going to get like a different sound, but it's not a bad sound. It's just a different timbre. So I suppose define what you are actually looking for. Think about what you're looking for from your sound. And that will help you look at your finger positioning to achieve that sound. If we're talking about getting a well-rounded, balanced, ringing tone, then I think the things to watch out for are to make sure you have enough flesh of your finger placed on the string, because that's going to give you a nice sweet tone. So if you place just the tip, you're not going to get as nice a sound as if you've got some flesh on there. And also make sure you're positioning your hand in a nice fingers down, thumb up position to help you pull and articulate really well. If you've got this kind of claw hand, you're not going to be able to articulate well, and that's going to give you a thin sound. I think those are my two top tips on that one. How are we doing for time here? Okay. I'm going to try and get through them, all of them, because we've only got a few more. Two more, I think. Here we go. So Kelly, when you feel like you've hit a plateau, what are some of the ways to snap out of that feeling? And then she says, I guess I should be more specific. I'm currently feeling like I've hit a plateau whilst trying to make a piece sound more musical and working on interpretation. But I've also had plateaus where I felt like my technique wasn't improving. How can I shake things up and shake off that feeling? Great question. The first thing, Kelly, is learning is not one-dimensional. When we're learning something, our learning graph doesn't go like this. Learning, the same rate all the time, always learning. Learning goes like this. I learn quite a lot. Oh, and then I plateau a little bit. I kind of don't learn a bit. Oh, and then I learned a lot. And then, oh gosh, I went backwards a little bit. And then I keep up with it. Okay. The learning journey has peaks and troughs and plateaus and all sorts of things going on. And so the first thing is embrace and accept that you are on a learning journey. And understand that sometimes it's going to feel like you are racing up your learning path. And other times it's going to feel like you're moving as slow as a slug. And that's okay. That's normal. Completely normal for us. That's how people learn. We don't just go, choo, perfect learning. That being said, if you do find you're in a plateau or you feel like you're heading down in your learning journey, I would say that there's a few things that I think are really, really good to do. One thing is to give the piece of repertoire that you're working on. So I'm going to talk specifically, because you've said you're currently feeling like you're hit a plateau with how to make your piece sound more musical and working on interpretation. So you're talking about emotion in your playing. So what I would recommend for you is give the piece a break for a couple of days and spend a bit of time listening and ask yourself, what is it that I'm enjoying when I'm listening to these pieces? What is it that's making them sound musical? What is it that I'm enjoying? And away from having that emotion about plucking the strings, just listening to other things and saying, what's musical about this piece? What's not musical about this piece? What am I enjoying about the interpretation? And then going back after a few days away from the piece and saying, okay, how do I actually want to make this musical? So you're asking yourself, what do I actually want to do? You're quantifying what you want to do to make it more musical. Because if you just say, I want this piece to be more musical, that doesn't help you really work on it, and it doesn't help you measure your progress with that goal. So if you come back and you go away and listen, you're like, oh, I really love the way that the phrasing of that piece that player does is so clear and beautiful, it really helps me follow the flow of the melody. Then you can go back to your piece and say, I'm going to make this more musical by being more clear with my interpretation of the phrasing. Okay, and then you can think about, okay, how am I going to be more clear with the interpretation of my phrasing? Am I going to use dynamics? Am I going to use rubato? Am I going to, just use a little bit of gesturing, a bit of breathing? How am I going to put that across? And then you have something specific that you can work on that you can also measure. The second thing I would suggest is recording yourself all along the way. Because often I find that when we think we're going through a plateau and we're doing something over and over again and nothing's changing, things are changing and we're just not realising. And the only way to notice that is to record yourself so you can listen back and realise the changes that are actually there. So I think it's a really, really great thing to record yourself. Okay, last one from Mary. When do we know if a piece is done and you can move on? And she says, I guess to say move on is the wrong thing to ask, since we should be revisiting pieces next time you play. But maybe a better question would be, how do you go from the learning phase to the polishing phase, and what does that look like? And then the revisiting phase, and how to know how to do that. So this is a great question and a great one to finish on, actually. How to finish a piece, how to finish a podcast. So the first thing is you have to define what finished means to you. And that might be different for different pieces. Because you might be learning a piece simply to learn a particular harp skill or to practice a particular harp skill in the piece. So let's take harmonics, for example, because we used that earlier on. You've decided that you want to get better at harmonics, so you're including some harmonic exercises in your warm-up, and you've also chosen a piece that has harmonics in it, which means you can practice that skill of harmonics in your repertoire. Your definition of complete for that piece might be that you are able to play all those harmonics with them all sounding. However, if you have chosen this piece to play in concert, your definition of complete might be quite different, because you want to perhaps achieve more than simply playing the harmonics and making sure they all sound. You maybe want to think about the phrasing and the dynamic and the feel and the emotion and what you're putting across to your listener. So there's some pieces that you're going to learn and you might not take them through the polishing phase and then the revisiting phase. You might have them in the learning phase, have incorporated that skill into your playing, and you might be happy with that, and that's okay. Not every piece has to be at performance level or has to be performance ready. It's up to you what pieces you want to choose to do that with. If you are choosing a piece that you want to take to polishing phase and revisiting phase, I imagine, so that you can perform, then I think you probably want to ask yourself, am I able to play this from start to finish without mistakes which detract from the emotion of the piece? So a piece isn't finished only when you can play it without making mistakes. Yeah, we can play a piece in concert and make mistakes and still consider it finished or consider it a good performance or, these kind of things. But the question to ask yourself is, can I play it from start to finish and any mistakes I make don't detract from the mood? And that's often linked to rhythm more than it is note mistakes or pitch mistakes. Because when someone makes a mistake with a note but keeps the rhythm, keeps the flow of the piece all the way through, you can still take us on a journey. Whereas if you make a mistake and you stop, or you're pausing and you're uncertain and we're getting into hearing a piece and then we go, oh, and then we keep going, right? That's going to be a little more off-putting during performance. And you might want to think this is maybe still in the learning phase because I can't play it from start to finish without those breaks in my concentration and breaks in the flow of the melody. The polishing phase, I would say, is about being able to consistently play it in that way, and also being able to express some sort of emotion or some sort of story or some sort of feeling through the music. When I'm polishing the music, I'm thinking about what I want to convey if or when I would share that piece of music. It doesn't matter if I'm never going to share it. The polishing phase is still me thinking about that. And again, once I can consistently play it, and any mistakes are not detracting from the flow, then I would consider, okay, I can have this in the revisiting phase. And it might, move in and out of these phases as well, quite fluidly. And there you go, my friends. I hope that has been helpful. We got through lots of questions there. And I'm really looking forward to our next question opportunity. And so if any of these questions did spark more for you, and you want to get them in now and reserved for our future Q&As, then please do just comment under this video. We will save them and we will get to them in our next bonus Q&A 5-week month, which I'm sure will be just around the corner. All right, guys, see you soon. Thank you all so much for joining me this week for our Q&A podcast. And of course, thank you to everyone who sent in questions and gave us something to chat about this week. Now, if you've been inspired or you have a question that's been sparked from this podcast, then just write it in the comments. We will save it for our next bonus Q&A and we will definitely make sure that it is answered for you. Now, next week, I'm going to be joined by the wonderful Amanda Whiting. She is a fantastic jazz harpist from Wales, and she's going to be telling us about her whole career right from the first moments that she started playing harp to this year, where she had some real milestones in her career, and we get to celebrate them with her, which is so exciting. Amanda is, of course, the guest artist in the How to Harp membership in November, and we're looking forward to having a workshop and a concert with her. But she is also the guest tutor, or one of the guest tutors, at the How to Harp retreat in 2026 here in Stirling in Scotland. And so I can't wait to be harping with her in person and hopefully with some of you next year. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please do give us a like, give us a comment and give us a subscribe and share it with your harping friends. It really helps us to continue making these podcasts for you guys if you show us that support in the comments and in the subscribes. And of course, to all of you, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're enjoying your harping journey and I hope to hear from you all very soon.